burning in the eyes of the Maker.
But I was working as a real estate developer in London, Ontario, building an office building, or retrofitting an office building in downtown London. I was the director of development, so the architects, the engineers, the contractors, the leasing guys, everybody was kind of working for me. And I was totally aware of and thought I was duly called to be that person, filled with my own sense of self. And I arrived to the site one day and go to an adjacent parking garage, drive up to the 6th floor, about to head down to the main floor and then walk across to the building, to the project. And as I get out of my car, a fairly new, nice Acura, wearing my fairly new, nice Harry Rosen suit and nice shoes and briefcase, I walk over to the stairwell to head down, and I open the door, and there, standing right in the middle of the top stair, is a guy who lives on the street. And he is in bad, bad shape. His clothing is horrible, and the smell was even worse. And I thought, what am I going to do here? You know, I got to get by this guy to get to work. And so I figure out a plan. I'll turn my briefcase sideways, and I'll just sort of move along the wall, and I will squeeze. He's right there. I'm squeezed by him and get down past him and get on with my day. And I get down to the first level, and I look back just as I'm about to continue down the stairs, and I look up, and he is teetering in a way that only a drunk person can, right? Like, it's a miracle he isn't going down those stairs head first. And I'm looking at him, and I have to stop. And I think, if I do not help this man, he will fall and break his neck. And so, what am I going to do? He can't walk down. I cannot carry him down. I don't really want to carry him at all. I'll squeeze by him again, go out of the door of the stairwell, get my car, pull my car up to the stairwell, and he can come in my car, and I'll drive him down to the main floor and let him off at the street. So I get my car, I come by, pull by, open the door, open the stairwell. He's still standing there, and I say, hey, buddy, I'll give you a ride down. So I kind of grab his arm and direct him, and he's kind of incoherent, and I put him in the passenger seat of the car, shut the door, go around to the other side, get in my side. No sooner had I driven 5 seconds on that parking garage top floor, he falls over into my lap with his head in my lap. So I'm kind of horrified, and I push him back, and I'm driving a stick, so I don't know how this is going to work, but I get it into first gear, and I slowly go over to the ramp to go down to the street, and the ramp is one of those circular ramps. So I took it super fast so the centrifugal force would keep him against the window. And I get to the main floor, and I think, drive him home. At least drive him home, right? And then I pay my $20 day fee, fixed rate, and get out onto the street. And the moment I hit the street, he snaps out of it. And he's awake, and he's lucid, and he's ready to converse. So I talk to him a little bit. I find out his name. It's Wendell Hathaway. Discover he grew up in the church, in the Catholic Church. Discover that he used to be married for many years, like 12 or 14 years, that he has a couple of kids, that everybody is out east right now, that he obviously has an addiction problem, used to be a construction worker. And as we're driving along, he tells me his whole life story. And I think, I'll drive you home, buddy. So where do you live? The London Men's Mission, down on York Street. We can get there. So 5 minutes later, we're there. We pull into the parking lot, and it is really starting to rain at this point. And so I lean over, and I shake his hand and say, hey, Wendell, good to meet you. Here you are. And he immediately goes into stupor mode again, and he doesn't want to leave the car. It's like when your kid is really stubborn and doesn't want to do what you want them to do, and he would not get out of my car. So I get out, and I go around to the outside, and I open the door, and I try to kind of pull him out of my car. And he eventually falls onto the asphalt, and it's really raining at this point, and he won't get up. His one leg's still hanging in my car, so I kind of pull it out of my car, and then I bend down to try to lift him up to get him to that door over there. And as I bend down to pick him up, and I'm kneeling beside him, I'm kind of holding his shoulder, and I look into his face for the first time, and he has these beautiful ice blue eyes. And I'm going, how did I not see these before? And they were compelling. And as I looked into his eyes, all of a sudden I felt what it must have been like for his mom to be holding her newborn baby, looking into those eyes for the first time. And I felt what it would have been like for his wife when they got married in that church, to look into those eyes with so many hopes and dreams for a real life with someone she obviously loved, saying, "I do." Felt what it was like for his son or his daughter to look up at their daddy and see these beautiful blue eyes. And so by that time, at that point, I'm kind of in tears myself. Wendell's crying because he hates the place. He does not want to go back in there. He hates his life. And I'm crying with all of these memories of his life. It was like God was crying in the rain. And then, I would say the most numinous spiritual event ever in my life occurs. I'm looking into his blue eyes, but all of a sudden, it's like Wendell kind of disappears and I kind of disappear, and I'm looking into the eyes of Christ. And it's like Jesus in me looking at Jesus in him or through him. And everything else just kind of faded away, and the whole moment was Christ. And then after a few seconds, I guess, of that, the workers from the mission saw us and struggling in the parking lot, and they come running out to help, and they lift Wendell up from his armpits and kind of carry him into his place. And I just go sit in my car for 10 minutes and lose it. Vincent van Gogh once wrote, "I prefer painting people's eyes to cathedrals, for there is something in the eyes that is not in the cathedral. However solemn and imposing the latter may be, a human soul, be it that of a poor beggar or of a streetwalker, is more interesting to me. Certainly more interesting to God, and certainly, at least based on my experience, more than just a human soul there when you look into their eyes." Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Love your neighbor as you love yourself is not a command that God gives you to slow up your life from getting on to what's really meaningful and true and beautiful and important, your reason for being. It is not an ought-to thing that is meant to create a difficult or miserable situation for you. God commands you to do that so that you will find life and see him, and look into his eyes and see his face. Christ in you, serving Christ in them, the moment becoming iconic, something you look through, like a parable, something you hear past, introducing you, showing you the face of your Maker. Your soul is served in serving other people. The good you feel, you are made to feel, because that is what it means to be like Christ and to be a human being. To feel it in your hands and in your tears is to know him in those ways. The good you see in them is what he has made in them. And when you recognize it out of the goodness of him in you and your heart, you're seeing through him, her, Christ. Jesus pulls back the veil and says, "I'm here." He shows you his face, maybe filled with tears, and says, "I'm here." You feel whatever you feel when you look into the face of God. And all you feel back from him is love and perfection and forgiveness and holiness and the terror of that. He's just and perfect and grace. One more parable to close. And this is the one he said this week, some 2,000 years ago. When the Son of Man comes in his and all the angels with him, this is one of those, God is just and holy and perfect, and we ought to have a good amount of fear and trepidation because of that fact. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, when Jesus comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was hungry, and you let me eat your church bagels. I was lonely, and you listened. I was afraid, and you saw it, and you made me feel like I belong. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." And then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or feed you or thirsty and give you something to drink?" I mean, they're so good, they don't even realize how good they are. "When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" And the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these, for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me." And then he will say to those on his left, "Sorry, you wished you sat on that section. Depart from me, you who are cursed." It is kind of scary. Like, I believe in grace so much that I'm often not afraid enough that I'm not doing or being or acknowledging that grace in a right enough way. Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." And they will also answer from a totally different heart and perspective, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" And he will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." And then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life.